I've got a bit more information on upcoming slots here. And I would say the biggest question that we're getting, and probably is front of mind for a lot of people, is, okay, now that I know I have an option between 8 weeks and 24 weeks, which one is better for me? Included some information here, some of the things that we're thinking through as we start modeling this out with clients here. And here's maybe the big four that come to mind for us. So one is a positive item that as we think through this longer period, the longer the period, the more eligible costs you have that are included in the formula. The formula for forgiveness, just to make sure we all have it handy in our mind, is total eligible costs. So all your payroll costs and your non-payroll costs, the rent, utilities, and interest on mortgages. You add up all of those, you subtract out wage reductions in excess of 25%. You multiply the sum of that by by your FTEs during your covered period or alternative covered period divided by your FTEs in one of the pre-COVID reference periods. So the higher the costs are, the greater your forgiveness is going to be. On the flip side, a lot of borrowers that we work with FTEs at a higher level than they otherwise would have because they had the PPP funds. And business might not be back up to the level they'd like it to be back up to. And so as they reach the end of their 8-week period, and many of them have reached the end of their 8-week period, they're hitting some tough decisions that they were able to defer a little bit because of PPP. So many of them had been planning FTE reductions after the 8 weeks. Maybe they had been planning wage reductions after the 8 weeks. If you do those and you have a 24-week covered period, suddenly what was after your covered period when it was 8 weeks is now included in your covered period when it's 24 weeks. So when you reduce FTEs or you reduce wages, that would take away from that bucket of eligible costs that we were talking about. So that would be a potential negative. A couple other question marks, for many borrowers, you're at the end of your covered period or you're nearly at the end of your covered period. So you more or less could predict your actual forgiveness amount, at least as well as you can, given the lack of SBA guidance we still have out there. As you think out an additional 16 weeks into the future, there are a lot of unknowns about what the world is going to experience over the next 16 weeks here. How quickly can we ramp back up? Do we see a resurgence in cases and governments locking things back down again? How are people going to respond to all these changes and the uncertainty out there? So we go from things that we might know now to a lot of unpredictability into the future here. And it's hard to predict FTEs and costs over that longer time period. And then the last one is really the devil we know versus the devil we don't know. The SBA hasn't been shy about throwing new rules at us throughout, and ones that may or may not have been in the original legislation. We really don't know if they are going to add more. So I know some borrowers that were pretty close to 100% are strongly considering, maybe I just file now, maybe I just apply now based on 8 weeks and be done, rather than risking future changes.